The opinions expressed on this program are solely those of individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of either Spectrum Generations or Time Warner Cable. Mature Lifestyle is made possible by Hollywood Casino. There's no place like Hollywood. And by Knowlton Hewins Roberts Funeral Homes and Cremation Service. Our homes are warm and welcoming, and we take care of you and your family like we would our own. Call us anytime. We are here for you.
Hello, welcome to Mature Lifestyle. Spectrum Generations is so pleased to bring programs of interest to seniors and frankly to everyone, and today is no exception. We have extraordinary guests, and I must say I'm so excited I'm going to try to stop talking and let them have a turn. And in the area of small worlds, first I'd like to introduce you to Denis Culley, and he really is not as old as I am, but I happened to go to law school with him. And he was so smart, and I remember admiring him in law school. He knew the questions to ask, but he also was so concerned about getting justice, and that's exactly what you're doing now. And then I'm also so pleased to have my friend Maeghan Maloney. It's a congratulatory time for all of us still. She is a new 4 months or so now, 5 months, as the District Attorney for Somerset County and Kennebec County. And an extraordinary accomplishment, as well as she's a former legislator, and we're talking about protecting seniors, and she even helped pass some of the laws that are going to protect those seniors. So I'm going to go back to you for a moment, Denis. You're working at Legal Services for the Elderly, which was a passion of yours, to the justice issue.
Sure.
Tell me how you chose that, and what does Legal Services for the Elderly do?
Sure, Libby. Well, I have to say I really enjoyed being in law school with you, especially family law, when we would be discussing laws that you helped to work on during your time in the legislature, and we would get sort of the behind-the-scenes explanation.
It's always not what you think,
about.
Is it?
Yes, yeah. But, well, after school, I clerked for a year in the Superior Court system, and then had various options of what I might do, but I knew I was always interested in the public interest path.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate that Legal Services for the Elderly picked up my option, and I've been with them ever since.
And what do they do, Denis?
Well, Legal Services for the Elderly is a provider of no-fee civil legal services. That's not criminal. That differentiates the work that Maeghan does from what I do.
Give our viewers an example. What does it mean, a civil problem?
A civil issue would be one individual versus another individual in a dispute. What we commonly think of as like when you a lawsuit, you know, that is a civil matter. And typically what you're seeking in a civil lawsuit is either money damages or injunctive relief, like an injunctive, a restraining order, or an order to do or to not do something.
Without any names, can you tell us an example of what's happened to someone who called you up for help?
Oh, sure. I think of a case, I'll call her Aunt Tiny. She was a woman who lived north of Bangor, whose niece took a sudden interest in her life and showed up and did a couple of days of house cleaning, went to the pharmacy for her once or twice, and those things turned out to be important for technical reasons later on. And then showed up on a fourth day with a notary and had her transfer her home to the niece for a total of $15,000, a home that was worth over $120,000.
That's a pretty expensive tab for running a few errands. But you were able to help the senior who had been taken advantage of.
Yes, we were able to
use that's a civil suit.
Yeah, we were able to use the Improvident Transfer of Title Act and get her house back.
All right, so if they go beyond that and commit some crimes, we have a tough on crime DA over here. First of all, can you tell our viewers, what does the district attorney do anyway?
Well, the district attorney oversees a number of different cases. There's actually both civil and criminal in the jurisdiction. So a civil example is the forfeiture statutes. The criminal laws are statutes like a new statute that was passed in 2011, which I like to refer to as the evil handyman statute.
Oh, tell us about that.
And that's, well, it was just passed. It was actually something I voted for when I was in the legislature. And it's specifically designed to help seniors. So it can help anyone who is a victim of the evil handyman. But it's generally, we do find that it's a lot of seniors who fall prey to this, where the person comes by, seems friendly, promises to do something like fix your fence, trim your trees, to replace the siding on your house, and ask for a down payment. You pay $500 to $1,000, and then you never see the person again.
They disappear with your money.
With your money. And so you can pursue that person civilly. So with
you could
what
call
Denis was talking about, you can, but that means you have to subpoena the person.
Right, it's
you have
very
to find the
expensive,
person,
yes.
bring the person to court, and then even if you're successful, you have to try and collect on that judgment.
Okay.
If you can follow that route, but you can also call the police, and you can file a police report. And if we can prove that the person intentionally defrauded you, so the person never had the intention of doing the work that he or she said was going to be done, then we can pursue that person criminally. And if we get a plea to guilty, we would include restitution. If we take the case to court and find the person guilty by trial by jury, we would always ask for restitution. And restitution is basically giving you your money back. And once we get a judgment that includes restitution, instead of you having to pursue the person and bring the person to court
Right.
over and over
You
again,
take that burden.
our office does it. Exactly.
And it also would help, I would think, if there's a person who is a pattern of doing this. Instead
Yes.
of 10 elderly people who've had a problem, you found the person who's been, as you said, the evil handyman for all 10 of them.
And
you
in
can-
fact, if the person has been convicted of this crime 3 times before, we can charge that person with a Class C felony
Right, okay.
instead of a Class D misdemeanor. So the amount of punishment goes from up to 1 year to up to 5 years.
Okay, both of you, through your different hats that you're wearing, you work together, it sounds like, because you have common interest in making sure that there's justice for seniors as well as everybody else. What are some of the most common issues that seniors run into that would throw them into the legal system, either into your office or your office? You talked about the handyman issues. You touched on exploitation, if you will, a relative or a friend taking advantage of you. Can you tell us some more examples of things that seniors should watch out for? Because it'd be better to prevent it in the first place. How do they take care of themselves and prevent this kind of thing from happening?
Yeah, sadly, seniors want to be careful about the proprietary relative. They want to be careful about the relative who wants to take over their life, the relative who actively seeks to have them, for example, make a joint bank account. Joint bank accounts can be a perilous thing. There are many times where seniors may want a
Right.
trusted relative to be able to pay
Because
bills
it's-
for them.
But if you have a joint bank account, that person has the same rights to that money as you do, right?
All of the money.
All of the money.
All of the money. And people sometimes think, oh, I'm going to put my daughter or my son
Right.
on my account. When they put someone on the account and they're creating a joint account.
Joint account.
And whoever they put on the account owns the whole account.
And of course,
Yeah.
we see often they don't realize what they've
Right.
done. Not only is account being drained sometimes, but if the person dies, that doesn't even go into their estate. If they have other kids or grandchildren they had hoped to leave some money to, the person who's on that account walks away with what's left over.
Sure.
So
Also on prevention, another thing, people should be very wary of amateur estate planning, especially a subset of
Is there a
estate
lot of that?
planning. Oh yeah, there's sort of an aerosol of misunderstanding that's out in the world that if you're elderly and you get sick, the state will take your house. And it's sort of this scenario
so
of
there's
like,
a fear
you're loaded
of what
into
the
the
state's
ambulance.
going to do to you.
Right, you're loaded into the ambulance, and right in back of them come people from the state to swipe your house. And there is something called the Estate Recovery Program, which interfaces with Maine Care benefits that could put a lien on a home after you die.
But
If
not-
you have a surviving spouse, that lien will not be perfected until after the surviving spouse dies. And there are other factors. There's a disabled child, the estate recovery could be delayed. But what so many elders think is, I have to put everything I own in someone else's name. The problem with putting things in someone else's name, like your money, your house, your assets, is you don't become technically impoverished, you are actually impoverished. And it puts you at risk of...
So you've worked all your life
Yeah.
to get your home,
Yeah.
or modest assets nevertheless, but you are totally impoverished if you put someone else's name on
Yes,
there.
and it puts you at risk. On Tiny's scenario is an example
Yes.
of not only a double whammy, but a triple whammy. When she contacted us, she was being evicted from
From her
what
own
she
home.
perceived
Well,
as
she
her
thought
home.
it was her home.
And I said, well, how can they evict you from your own home? And then I did some research in the registry, and I found out it was not her home, it was her niece's home. It was her niece's house.
Wow.
And so Aunt Tiny wound up in a situation where she was totally impoverished because her house was her only asset. She was at risk of homelessness because she was being evicted, had no place to go and no real resources to go there. And pursuant to DHHS regulation, she could be facing a Maine care penalty for having transferred the house for less than value.
Right, because you're not allowed to do that, are you?
Exactly. So those are things seniors should, on the prevention end, they should think about.
Okay, so who do they talk to? I mean, obviously there are lots of great folks at Spectrum Generations who help them, but if you're worried, if somebody comes to you, a relative that you trust, and you're pretty vulnerable if you're sick, as you talked about, Aunt Tiny, who can you talk to? They can talk to you,
Yeah,
Legal Services for the Elderly. Is this a good idea? Go ahead.
Sure, 1-800-750-5353. If they're going to engage in estate planning or what's called Maine care planning, seeking to array their assets so that they may qualify for Maine care, which is done, they really want to consult with a professional. They should consult with a lawyer before they go doing that.
And you were talking about beware of the amateur estate planning.
Beware of the financial planner or the relative or the friend who might tell you, you know. The other thing to be aware of, as Maeghan is going to be talking about, is the evil handyman. We've had scenarios. We had a scenario out near the coast where a handyman inserted himself into an elderly couple's life, did a little bit of repairs around the house, and before much time had elapsed, he had actual title to the house, leaving them a very limited life estate, and he was living in the back room. We find it's often not that far from fixing the front step to living in the back room.
Yes.
And elders are susceptible to the evil. Well, it's not just trusting, it's also a certain pragmatism. They have repair needs, maintenance needs, all of that. It's hard to get someone to show up and do something, anything.
Right.
And also they may represent companionship. The cup of coffee around the table may soon turn into a familial type relationship and some sort of transferring of assets. And also there are the scammers. You know, you need a new chimney, you need a new roof, the roof is removed, and then some talk about what it's going to cost. Maybe there'll be a home equity line of credit set up by the evil handyman, you know, that sort of thing. I might mention the evil handyman. In Massachusetts, there's a registry for handymen. Maine does not have that, but this registry includes a fee, that registration fee the handyman have to pay. And when people are defrauded by bad home repair of one sort or another, down to and including locksmithing and painting, they can actually collect from those funds, and it helps to solve the problem of the collection-proof home repair person.
One thing I want to emphasize in Maine is people are often reluctant to call the police.
Yes.
And it's important, what I hope people will take from this show is to call the police, to let them know that something has happened. And if they're not sure it's a crime, that's okay.
Call
because
anyway.
the police can get the report, can write down what happened, then that report will be sent to the district attorney's office, and I'll evaluate it. If we can bring a criminal charge, we will. But I don't want a person to sit and ponder, well, is this really a crime? Is this not a crime? Go ahead, report it, let us make that decision. Because if it's at all possible for my office to pursue it, that's what I want us doing.
So we have two great people on our side. We're going to have to take a quick station break. We'll be right back for more great information for our seniors.
This is the new Hollywood Casino, featuring the heart-pounding action of live table games with Vegas-style blackjack, roulette, poker, and more. Now playing at the place where the fun never stops. From the thrill seekers to the blockbuster winners, here you've got the lead role, because there's no place like Hollywood.
Spectrum Generations. Live healthy, live well. Get answers, get connected. Spectrum Generations, specializing in the art of aging.
Life should be celebrated, It's a special day when family and friends gather together to celebrate the life of a loved one. A celebration of life helps us honor our loved one and keep our memories alive. Whether you're planning a traditional funeral, a creative celebration of life, or a blend of both, at Knowlton Hewins Roberts, we are truly committed to meet the personal and unique needs of you and your family. Knowlton Hewins Roberts. Visit us online or visit our 2 locations in Augusta and Winthrop.
Tee off against senior hunger during Spectrum Generation's 11th annual Meals on Wheels golf tournament, Monday, June 10th at Natanis Golf Course. Enjoy an afternoon of golf followed by a barbecue banquet, auction, and awards presentation. For more information or to register, go to spectrumgenerations.org or call 207-620-1677. Proceeds help provide Meals on Wheels to more than 1,600 homebound seniors throughout Central Maine. Space is limited, so call 207-620-1677 to register today.
Welcome back to Mature Lifestyles. We have some charismatic and dynamic guests today. They are leaders, and I am so grateful that they're here. We have Denis Culley, Legal Services for the Elderly, and our own DA, District Attorney, Maeghan Maloney from Kennebec and Somerset. But I am sure she works with DAs across the state, because sometimes these county lines don't mean very much when there are problems for the elderly like we're all talking about. Which leads me to my first question to you. I understand that the 2 of you are working together on a task force right now about elder abuse. Could you tell us about the task force and why there is such a thing?
Well, there is such a task force because we do need to work together.
Yes.
And it is an elder abuse task force that both Denis and I serve on. We meet every other month to examine specific cases, to talk about things that need to be changed in the law, and to talk about new approaches in dealing with these cases. And we have people from the Attorney General's office there, people who run assisted living facilities. It's a wide spectrum, and I find that it helps enormously when I'm evaluating cases to have the input of all of the people around the table.
You have this broad spectrum of expertise who see this abuse, not just one person who calls the police. That's important to you, very important.
It is important, but it is also important to emphasize you don't have to choose. You don't have to say, should I call the police or should I call Denis at Legal Services for the Elderly?
Do them all.
Absolutely.
Do them all.
Absolutely do them all. We're working together, and it's
you're
good
really
to
empowering people. You can, these groups are here, you want to help.
Yes.
That's why you wanted to do your job, so that you can make things better for people. The same thing with Denis. You've devoted your life to trying to set things right. Do you have any stories? When we say elder abuse, it's neglect, it's taking advantage, but are there physical examples of elder abuse that you're concerned about as well?
Well, we do have a case in common right now, which is it's a very sad case where it's a sexual assault against an elderly person, and she wasn't physically able to defend herself. And that's what makes this population one that we really need to focus on, because they are particularly vulnerable in different physical ways, and when you hear about a case like that, you want to make sure that you're focusing on it.
And I think sometimes maybe the isolation of an elderly person, perhaps living with the family, which isn't always the kind of supporting family that we want to see. What if you suspect something? I'm a citizen. Do I want to get involved? Do I call you and say, you know, I really think something's happening to someone in this house, an elderly person? How does a private citizen get involved? Is that appropriate? Do they call someone? Do they call the Attorney General? Do they call the DA?
It's always appropriate to call the police to report something
if you're suspicious of somebody's being abused.
100%. Absolutely. It's always appropriate to call the police. And also you can call Legal Services for the Elderly.
We get calls regularly from concerned neighbors, friends, and relatives.
Yes.
Of course, as attorneys, as civil attorneys, we need a client. And so we will ultimately, and our client has to be 60 or older, a Maine resident 60 or older.
Okay.
But once a call comes into the helpline, eventually we will make sure that we speak with the elder, and the elder would be our client. We can also take direction from an elder's agent pursuant to a power of attorney if we're sure that the elder is an appropriate client.
Right.
And when calls come into our 1-800 number, 1-800-750-5353, the intake will take some basic information, and then very shortly thereafter, a helpline attorney will call them back. And if it's the sort of matter that can be handled by brief representation, by phone or by mail, then the helpline attorney will handle it. If it's something that's appropriate for referral, they'll refer it to either the private bar or the public bar if appropriate, or if it's a non-legal problem, perhaps to a social work or agency. A subset of the civil problems that can't be resolved with brief representation will be referred internally.
But you're a great resource to help them find how to go. They don't have to figure it out. You'll help them figure it out.
Once they reach our intake, there is a system set up to make sure no one falls through the cracks. If there's a problem that we can find a solution for, we will.
So anybody 60 years or older in Maine who has a problem with anything, from the handyman to a relative that's taking advantage of them or whatever,
public benefits,
you're there for
eviction
them.
issues.
You're there for them. And the private bar volunteers some time as well to help you, because you couldn't possibly do it all, could you?
We have a low-fee referral panel. We also have some members of private bar who take pro bono cases. Yeah,
I'm sure our DA sees a lot of crime surrounding drugs and having nothing to do with the elderly, but how it does impact the elderly. You want to talk about that?
It absolutely does, because there's no question that the elderly are a target for home burglaries, and particularly when they're at their most vulnerable, which is when they have been diagnosed with an illness. So when a burglar hears that someone has been diagnosed with cancer, or has just had surgery, they will suspect that there's OxyContin in the house, and that's when they choose to break in. So it's particularly sad because it's when the person is at their lowest point that the break-in happens. And those are cases that we do focus on, and the best way to prevent it really is to have the best security system that you can. Make sure that you don't have more medication than what you absolutely need in your household, and to try to have it in a lockbox, keep it safe, and don't tell a lot of people about it.
Don't tell a lot of people about it. My primary care physician was saying that he talked to a local constable, and he said, these days, burglars don't go to your jewelry box, they go to your medicine cabinet, which is what you're talking about too. So you see that a lot. Anything else what our seniors should know? I know we have a short time and you have so much to say. The most important thing is they know how to call you now, Legal Services for the Elderly, and call the police, and you can get to our wonderful DA. Anything else you want them to know about protecting themselves, prevention, or getting justice if they've been wronged?
Yeah, one thing I would say is it's often indicated to have a power of attorney, which is a document that appoints an agent to act for you. But sometimes people make the mistake of finding the relative who's not that busy, maybe the kid who lives in the basement and plays a lot of video games, and set them. What you want is the most responsible and trustworthy person in your life.
Exactly.
Yes. And you want to be careful. It can be a very
because
powerful
power of attorney, explain to people what that is.
It's a document. The word power actually means letter or document.
Right.
And so a power of attorney is a document that sets someone up as your agent to act for you in the world. And well, depending on the content. Powers of attorneys vary depending on how they're written. You have to actually read a power of attorney. But a lot of them empower people to access bank accounts, safe deposit boxes, to do anything you could do with your money. And so you want to absolutely, right to the bottom, trust somebody who you set up as an agent pursuant to a power of attorney.
That's a huge, great piece of advice.
And on that, you often find that people will get a general power of attorney to give the person access to do whatever they need.
Powers.
But you really may only need a specific power of attorney.
Limited power.
Get exactly something that designates exactly what it is you need this person to do for you.
So do you do that for people? If an elderly person says, you know, I'm not doing so well, I really need some help, I want you to help me with this power of attorney, does Legal Services for the Elderly do that?
Occasionally staff attorneys do them. We do them primarily through our low-fee referral panel and our volunteers. And we also do revocations of power of attorney, which are at least as important.
That's a good point. How do you get them back? How do you take them back once you give them? How do you?
Well, you revoke them expressly. You revoke them in writing.
But you need the attorney to help you do that. I'm going to stop you for just a moment, and we're going to come back with some final words of wisdom from these two great guests. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Spectrum Generations. Live healthy, live well. Get answers. Get connected. Spectrum Generations, specializing in the art of aging.
This is the new Hollywood. Hollywood Casino, featuring the heart-pounding action of live table games with Vegas-style blackjack, roulette, poker, and more. Now playing at the place where the fun never stops. From the thrill seekers to the blockbuster winners, here you've got the lead role, because there's no place like Hollywood.
Tee off against senior hunger during Spectrum Generations' 11th annual Meals on Wheels golf tournament, Monday, June 10th at Natanis Golf Course. Enjoy an afternoon of golf followed by a barbecue banquet, auction, and awards presentation. For more information or to register, go to spectrumgenerations.org or call 207-620-1677. Proceeds help provide Meals on Wheels to more than 1,600 homebound seniors throughout Central Maine. Space is limited, so call 207-620-1677 to register today.
Thank you for joining us today on Mature Lifestyles. We want to finish up with some words of wisdom, some pearls, some things that these two tools that they think would be better to help seniors avoid problems with the law or people taking advantage of them. So Dennis, what's your number one wish?
Well, my number one wish would be alert seniors and people around them, being alert to preventive measures, such as the ones I talked about earlier. A real wish of mine is that Maine would join virtually all the other states in America. I think we're one of only 5 states that have no specific laws criminalizing certain crimes against the elderly, using a 60 and older. The other states
So
have either specific crimes or enhanced penalties.
Enhanced penalties
Some
or
states
specific
have
crimes.
both. Maine at this point has nothing.
Nothing.
We have no crimes that specifically
Rise to that level or whatever.
that age matters and no enhanced penalties.
I'm going to ask my
for crimes
DA,
against
would that be
those.
helpful to you?
It certainly would, because it would help us not only in getting an enhanced penalty after we win the case, but it also helps us in getting a settlement of the case. And it's always easier for the senior if we don't have to go all the way to trial. But when someone's looking at those enhanced penalties, the risk of going to trial is too great. They're more likely to plead guilty, and that would be a wonderful tool to
So
have.
it's a great tool, your toolbox. And how can you make that happen? The two of you. We sound like we have powerful people here who have creative ideas. What's the next step to make that happen?
Well, it's a legislative change, and it's something that with the task force that we're on, that we're looking at, and that we'll be proposing to a legislator as part of the task force, since we have such a cross-section of people.
So you have the right stakeholders at the table who get it.
Yes.
And who know it's a tool that we're missing. Anything else you'd like to see, Madam DA?
Well, that is the number one.
Number one.
And I want to emphasize that because we do have enhanced penalties for hurting the youngest of our population. We need the enhanced penalties for the oldest of our population. They're also in a vulnerable place, and that's a tool that I'd like to have.
And I'd like to say this, I know that you do this a lot, but speaking out, educating people, both of you are doing that. Thank you so much for joining us today. We want to keep our elders safe and working with good people who care about their future. Thank you for joining us on Mature Lifestyle.
Thank you for your
Mature Lifestyle is made possible by Hollywood Casino. There's no place like Hollywood. And by Knowlton Hewins Roberts Funeral Homes and Cremation Service. Our homes are warm and welcoming, and we take care of you and your family like we would our own. Call us anytime. We are here for you.
You're watching TWC TV, only on Time Warner Cable.